I'm just getting a random question. That's all. I'm sorry. There, I was trying to up the light and stuff. Okay, re-ask the question. I'm sorry. Oh, these are originals. They're Secret Worlds. They're built off of that, or a branch off. Because at the end of Bloodlust, which is the last one on that series, it talks about the CIRS council members, which are these three. Civil international rights of the supernatural. I had to say that slowly, otherwise I probably would trick over my tongue. They are what you would call the very first of their species. They oversee all of the lesser councils, so your Vampire Summons, Werewolf's Den, and Slayer's Lair. They oversee those, and they choose who technically goes into those particular sections. They're basically the world leaders, as you would call it, of their world. No, they've been around long before the other councils. It's just I started with the Secret World series first, and then these ones are actually books. Not books. They're all books. These are novels, whereas the other ones are more like your novella, flash fiction, short versions of stories. And it was more because I wasn't sure how to really bring them in yet, but I did want a government that oversaw the smaller governments, and it had to be like the first species of every one of them kind of thing. Because a lot of people would like to know how vampires, werewolves, and hunters slash slayers existed. So playing a backstory kind of to how in my perspective of my world, how vampires, werewolves, and slayers became an existent thing. Now hybrids also came into play, and shapeshifters and witch shifters and all these other random things that rumble around in my brain. Oh, and familiars. Familiars is a big one. The bantering attitude between Alex and Valentine. And it took, I think, 3/4 of the book before they actually really got together, as it were. And it's kind of because in the second book, which is Wild Ride, is when they initially meet, and when Valentine first walks into the room, he ends up calling Alex a fucker, if it didn't mute me out. And in return, Alex called him a dickwad. And that kind of continued on into the third book, which is about both of them. So it is kind of an enemies to lovers, because Valentine, it says it, he does say it several times, and I think it also says in this Sypnosis, oh my god, I can't say the word, that he would rather all other species that are not slayers to die a horrible death. So yeah, he's like, I'm never falling for any species other than a human. A Valentine? You have to be a little more clarified. Oh, that I can't give away, because that would actually give away the secret of the story. It's because of, well, there's a backstory to why he is the way he is, and then there's also another sector that you would know from, I will say it in a way that you guys would kind of know, but exactly what Graham and Mateo and Elias are is what Valentine is. My brain? I don't know how to answer that. the series of CIRS was more of after I had written Secret Worlds, I didn't really know what else to write for a while, and then I thought about it. I'm like, well, these guys did talk about a government that existed, but there's not really a backstory or anything of how they even came to be, which is partly why I started the series, because it's a backstory of how each species began and essentially what their leaders had gone through over the millennia of them being alive. I love vampires and werewolves and everything in between. And M&M romance and all that fun stuff. If we're talking about my writing as a general whole, Sherilyn Kenyon was kind of my inspiration when it came to like mythology and stuff. But when it came to some of this newer stuff, is more like Louisa Masters had been my go-to for um, reading, and very interesting prospects of what she had in her writing. But obviously, you want to try be original with your own stuff, so you change things and make things more your own rather than it being following somebody else's. So those are my two main ones. One is Lewis and Masters is an M&M paranormal romance writer. Sherilyn Kenyon is mythology, fantasy, romance, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Although they can be read on their own or individually, but preferably one after the other. No, it's definitely in our modern day, because in all three of these books, there are literally named restaurants in various areas of where these books are taking place. So in Texas, which is the second book, there are names of places and parks and stuff that are actually in there from current day. Wild Bite takes place in Vernon, BC. Or, sorry, not Vernon, Kelowna, BC. And the third one takes place in Dublin, Ireland, because all three of the main characters that's kind of their area. But yeah, there's real place names and stuff that actually signify that's the present day and age. Friendships, that's a big one. You also have your main antagonist in every single one of them. So there's secondary antagonist in the first one, and then there's the main antagonist, but the main antagonist has a very, very small role, and the other one in that first book happens to be essentially they thought was the main ringleader, but turns out he was not. And then in Wild Ride, again, not giving any spoilers away, the little tiny character antagonist that was in the first one, it's a much bigger one in the second one and is related to that one. The basically family relations. And then in the third one, it's also a family relation between the main character and the main antagonist. Although he doesn't learn that until pretty much near the end of the book, because he is under the impression that it was somebody else. Oh yeah, there is definitely one, as Lulu knows, of the one I'm currently working on, which happens to involve my first main character in Wild Bite's brother. So yeah, there's gonna be some redemptions for the characters that obviously did wrong but aren't trying to be wrong, and they are seen in some of these books, so they'll end up getting a redemption in my new series whenever I decide to release it. Sugar, which is Species United Global Relations, which again is another off branch of this, but it's gonna have a lot more books than just 3. There's a lot of redemption characters, let's put it that way. When it comes to who the antagonist is or should be, I also look at how it should connect to one or both of the characters to make it more driven. Um, uh, with uh, with Lucifer in the first book, he's directly connected to one of the antagonists, but the other one he knows nothing about. And with the second book, Wild Ride, the connection happens between Sylvester and the main antagonist. So I hope that answers the question. So yeah, there's a lot of thought process that goes into it. Wild Hunt. Because there is a such thing between pureborns, purebloods, and converted, and that goes for both werewolves and vampires. So purebloods are those that somehow existed without any alterations. They were just completely born and they were either werewolf or vampire. You got the pureborns, which are conceived from those species, and then you got the converted, which is either somebody that got bit by a werewolf, scratched by a werewolf, or infected by a vampire. So there's three types of species connections with my werewolves and vampires, and then you got the hybrids. But yeah, Wild Hunt, he's a big badass that deserved what he got in the end. From an earlier conversation, if I ever was able to go back to it, probably Drake. If we're talking about older series. Because I don't think I did enough development with him, and that's also by being expressly told that I probably should have done a lot better with him. I know one of the things is not to be so critical, and I guess the better word is stereotypical, because I know that was something that was talked about. Technically Valentine. He's very judgmental towards it. He's very judgmental towards others. Although he does have good reasons until he, yeah, gets the stick out of his ass. Yeah, no, he has one shoved up there real far. It's an M&M romance. Actually, M&M pregnancy romance. All three of them are. So, be prepared for that. Species familiars, how that works is it stays within them for a certain period of time, and then the magic of the familiar ejects them into, and it becomes kind of like an egg shape, and it's usually like specialized colors between both the parents that they conceived from, and it's usually, yeah, not necessarily like a dragon egg, but in a similar aspect. And then it's usually a couple months after that the egg hatches into their child. So, no, not painful at all, because even Graham's familiar said, no, it's not painful. Quit panicking. So, there's that. Magic. I love magic. I've always been into the supernatural paranormal side of things for as long as I can remember. And I tried when I was younger, I tried doing, like, obviously fan fiction like everybody did. One of the things I did a short story for my professor teacher. Great, it was like grade 5 or 6. No, grade 6. And it was a fan fiction of Scooby Doo. And then I kind of, which also originally, when you look at it, you think that they're real ghosts and stuff, but then you find out at the end that they're just people messing around with the crew and that. So I guess my where I got the interest in that was before I even knew that they unmasked a person, I always thought the fantasy paranormal side of those TV shows and that was more fascinating than finding out there was a human, which was kind of a downer for me. So I preferred reading into supernatural and paranormal stuff that actually stayed that way rather than coming back to being a human being. I think that made sense. Yep, most definitely. I find that you have such a heavy and large section where you could end up exploring more. So, whereas humanized worlds, there's not a heck of a lot you can expand on. At least in my opinion, I don't find it as interesting to do just human on human. That's my best answer I can give you. Anyway, he's definitely, as much as he's not into uh, gay romances and stuff, he is still very, very supportive of what I do. He tries to give feedback as best as he can, but it's not exactly his forte. He's more science fiction kind of reading, and I think horror and suspense and mystery. So I think those are his more genres that he's into. Well, the simple fact that these are supernatural creatures, and wild is part of their nature is to be not just human. So the wild aspect of it is literally just saying that they're not human at all. Like, yes, they have human traits, but a lot of them are more characterized towards their animal instincts and or traits. Well, Tyler and I have already said that the Secret Worlds is more of a 3 pepper. These ones are, if I had to guess, between about 3 and 4 ish. So, because they're also a longer book rather than your novella books from earlier. Well, with the supernatural worlds and their species, the females of vampires and werewolves and various other species are non existent. They actually died out. You have your humans, yes, but with these guys, they prefer to stay within their own society because otherwise, if a human ends up saying, I don't like you as whatever species you are, they have to do the whole mind wipe thing, so they trust within their own species, at least in the Secret Worlds and in the first 3 of these books. It's later on into Sugar that they're more pushable into a different scenario, but they prefer being in their own gender. Yeah, one of the new books I'm working on, I'm starting to introduce autism, which is a spectrum that I'm on. I'm ADHD, so autism, ADHD, and I'm also non-binary myself. So I'm playing a bit into my newer series with neurodivergent characters and playing more into stuff because I have not read very much, or if at all, anything to do with a main character being in that spectrum of things. I'm a crazy person. I'm crazy because anybody that ever talks to me, they're like, if I went into your head, how would I feel? I'm like, you're gonna get lost and never find yourself out in my brain. That's how I'm crazy. I have too many ideas in my head. Not enough time in a life to write it all down. So when I start a book, I know I know the beginning, and I know the middle, and I kind of know the end result. It's more of the fillers in between those things that I have to figure out what would work best. And I've noticed between my previous book series, so the IDS, Secret Worlds, Finders, and Demon Bargain between what I've written then and what I'm starting to write, that I've also slowed down my process rather than just write, release, write, release. I'm actually slowing down, editing, making sure that it sounds good, and, well, hopefully have some beta readers, and then getting a system to read it back to me, because if I just read it, I'm not going to catch any sentences that sound funny unless it's being read back to me. So my process is literally writing it, making sure that everything is written down properly, going into the edit process, and then going into the re-listening to it and making sure everything sounds good, and then getting into the release process. So I don't even post books until I know they're written first, because then I have time to edit. That would be Entering Nocturne, the one that Lulu Beta read, and has given me some feedback on it.